You could earn twice what your neighbor earns, invest less than them, and still retire with more money. That is not a motivational line, that is arithmetic. And most people never run this calculation. There is one number inside every retirement account that matters more than your salary, your fund, or your stock picks. It is not your return rate. It is not your monthly contribution. It is how long your money has been running. The gap between people who feel this and people who only know it intellectually costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. I am going to show you that gap with two real people, real numbers, and math you can check yourself. Here is the claim. Your income is the least interesting variable in the entire wealth equation. Time is the only one that matters. Say that to someone who just got promoted and they will laugh. Say it to someone who started investing 10 years late. They will not laugh. They will go quiet. Because once you run the numbers, the gap does not close with effort. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which side of that gap you are currently on. Before the two people, let us be precise about what compound interest actually does. One word explains everything. That word is reinvested. Simple interest is flat. You earn 10% on $100. Next year you earn 10% on the same 100. Compound interest is different. The $10 you earned in year 1 gets added to the 100. Now you earn on 110. Year 2 earns $11 instead of 10. Year 3 earns a little more. Each year the base gets larger. You are earning interest on your interest. On the interest your interest already earned. The growth is not a line, it is a curve. That curve starts almost flat. Leave it alone long enough and it turns nearly vertical. That shape is the entire story here, not the rate. Not the contribution size, the curve, specifically how many years of it you actually get. Now meet Elena and Priya, same fund, same 8% annual return. Same $300 a month, the only difference is when each of them starts. Elena starts at 25. She contributes for exactly 10 years, then stops completely at 35. Never adds another dollar after that. She leaves everything inside the account. 30 more years of compounding with zero effort and zero additional contributions from her side. Priya starts at 35, exactly when Elena stops. Same $300 a month. She contributes every single month until 65. Add up the raw numbers. Elena put in $36,000 total. Priya put in $108,000, 3 times more. At 65, Elena has $470,000. Priya has $375,000. Elena wins by nearly $100,000. Elena wins by $100,000 while contributing a third of what Priya invested. Because her money ran for 40 years, not 30. This is not about the numbers I chose. Run it with any numbers, the same outcome holds. It is structural, not coincidental. Here is the 30-second check this gives you. Ask yourself, how many years has your money actually been compounding? Not how long you have been trying, not how much you have contributed. How many years has your invested money been sitting and growing? If the answer is small, that is the only number worth fixing right now. Before rate of return, before fund selection, before everything else. Now here is why this happens, because once you see the mechanism you stop needing to take it on faith. Most of the growth in a long compounding curve happens in the final third of the timeline. Not the beginning, the end. Elena's early dollars are not just sitting for 40 years. They are compounding for 40 years. The last decade alone does most of the work. By that final decade, Elena's balance is large enough that 8% returns more each year than Priya contributes all year. That is the tipping point. Priya worked harder, contributed 3 times as long, put in 3 times the money. And Elena, who did nothing for 30 years, still wins. Not because Priya failed, not because Elena was smarter. Because a head start inside a compounding system is worth more than almost any amount of catch-up effort. Fair point though, Elena's example assumes $300 spare dollars at 25. A lot of people at 25 simply do not have that. Entry-level income, student debt, first apartment, first car that breaks down on a Thursday. Early adulthood is frequently the least financially stable decade. Telling someone buried in loan payments that they are structurally behind is not advice. It is survivorship bias with a spreadsheet attached. There is also a behavioral case for starting small. $50 a month at 25, sustained, often beats $300 a month at 30 that stops after 4 months, because the number felt like a stretch. Consistency compounds just as much as the dollar amount does. A small amount that never stops wins. The honest version of this argument is not start big immediately or your future is over. It is start whatever you can sustain, as early as you can sustain it. The account does not care how large your first contribution is, it only cares how long it has been running. Now let us move Elena and Priya into a shape that looks like an actual financial life. Because the tidy version understates the damage. Same to people, same 8%, but now Priya does not just start later. She starts later for the exact reasons most people do. She waits until the student loans are cleared. Then until after the wedding. Then the mortgage down payment arrives. Then the first child. Each reason is legitimate on its own. Stacked together they cost her the decade between 25 and 35. The exact decade Elena was compounding quietly. Now Priya tries to catch up aggressively. She pushes to $500 a month instead of $300. Keeps it going for 30 years. Run the math. Priya retires with $620,000. She is ahead of Elena's for $170,000 now. But look at what it cost her. The extra contributions above what Elena ever put in total to roughly $144,000 additional dollars. Out of her own pocket, $144,000 extra dollars of personal sacrifice just to end up slightly ahead. And that assumes she sustains $500 a month for 30 straight years. No job loss, no medical bill, no single bad year. If she cannot sustain that and drops back to $300 a month, she never catches Elena. She finishes at 65 with less. Despite investing 3 times as much money over 3 times as many years. That is the shape that costs real money. Identical people, identical discipline, identical return, only variable that moved was 10 years. And 10 years is not something you can buy back. Every other mistake in personal finance is reversible. Overpaid fees, you can switch funds. Wrong account type, you can open a better one. This one, once the calendar has moved past it, is not reversible. The years are simply gone. That is what makes it different from everything else. Here is the part worth sitting with. None of the decisions that caused it looked like mistakes while they were happening. Paying off student loans before investing feels responsible. Saving for a wedding feels responsible. Prioritizing the mortgage down payment feels responsible. None of those decisions are wrong in isolation. The trap is not any one choice. It is that all of them draw from the same limited pool of compounding years. And nobody sends you a bill in the moment for the years you did not use. The cost only shows up decades later. By the time the gap is visible, it is already too large to close through sheer effort alone. That is what makes it so dangerous. The numbers I showed you also undercount the real damage. They only measure account balances at retirement. They do not measure what that money did along the way. Elena's account crossed $100,000 in her late 30s. A full quarter century before Priya's account gets anywhere close. Those years gave Elena options Priya did not have. The ability to weather a job loss without panic selling investments. The freedom to take a lower-paying job she actually wanted. The flexibility to help a child through college without derailing her own retirement. None of that is captured in a single number at 65. All of it traces back to the same 10-year head start. Now the third variable, both examples quietly ignored. The one that often matters more than when you start or how much you contribute. Where the money sits while it compounds. Every dollar growing inside a taxable brokerage account gets taxed along the way or at withdrawal. Move the same contributions into a tax-advantaged account and the growth curve stays the same. What you actually keep at the end does not. Run Elena's scenario through a $401,000 with a 50% employer match on the first 6%. That matches an instant 50% return. Before a single day of compounding begins, Elena's balance moves from $470,000 to over $600,000 without contributing one extra dollar. The match alone, compounding for decades, closes more of the gap than Priya's $144,000 of personal sacrifice ever did. If no employer match exists, a Roth IRA gives you tax-free growth with the same structural advantage. Either way, check the structure before debating the behavior. There is also a fee hiding inside whatever fund you are holding. A 1% annual expense ratio sounds trivial against 8% returns. Across 40 years it quietly removes 15 to 20% of the final balance. Not because 1% is large, because it compounds against you. The same relentlessness that builds your returns also builds the drag of your fees. A low-cost index fund at 0.03% is not a marginal upgrade. Over for decades it behaves like a second employer match. Except this one comes entirely from not paying for underperformance. Check your expense ratio today. Here is the diagnosis. 3 cases. Find which one is yours and you will know exactly what your next move is. Case 1. You are in your 20s or early 30s and wondering whether to wait until you earn more before starting. Do not wait. The years you have right now are the cheapest investing years you will ever have. Time is doing most of the work, not contribution size. Start with whatever you can actually sustain, even if it is $50. The account only cares how long it has been running. Case 2. You already lost several years. Student loans, a rough start, not knowing better. You are in your late 30s or 40s now. It is not too late. But be honest about what catching up actually costs. It requires meaningfully larger contributions sustained for your entire remaining working life, not one aggressive year followed by returning to old habits. Know the number going in so the sacrifice does not blindside you halfway through. Case 3. You are already contributing consistently and wondering what is left to optimize. This is where the third variable matters most. Are you capturing your full employer match? Is your money growing inside a tax-advantaged account? For people already doing the basics right, these structural questions are worth more than any fund switch. If you are encased and cannot stomach stopping investments entirely to catch up, there is a middle path that works. Instead of jumping immediately to the full catch-up contribution, increase in stages. Every time your income rises, root half the increase into the retirement account. Before it becomes part of your regular spending, you never feel a sudden squeeze. You arrive at the aggressive contribution rate without the shock of a sudden budget cut, slower than an immediate correction, but sustainable in a way a sudden squeeze usually is not. A plan you stick with beats a theoretically perfect plan you quit in month 8. Here is what to carry out of this. Compound interest was never about interest rates. It was never about income, it is about time. The years you gave your money to grow or did not. That is the whole story. Ilana and Priya earned the same return. Held the same fund, worked with the same discipline. The only thing that separated a $100,000 gap from a lifetime of extra sacrifice was 10 years. I told you at the start that income is the least interesting variable in the wealth equation. I hope now that does not sound provocative. It sounds obvious. Which usually means it was always true and just needed the right example to become visible. This was that example. The years you have right now are the cheapest ones you will ever get. What you do with the next 30 seconds of thinking matters more than most financial decisions you will make this entire year. Subscribe to Wealth Insider Build if this gave you something to act on. Every week I break down the math behind real financial decisions. No vague motivation, no snowball posters. Just numbers that actually tell you something. Drop a comment. Which case are you in? Case 1, 2, or 3. I read every comment and reply to as many as I can. And if you know someone still waiting to start because the amount feels too small, send them this. The size never was the variable. The variable is the one the calendar is running down right now, whether they look at it or not.